Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, the hot topic of the century, it seems like, is AI, artificial intelligence. And I'm so excited to dive deep into this. Even if you, my friend, are needing a 101 level, you're like, I've heard about this thing, I can't ignore it, and I need to know what I should and shouldn't be doing with AI at work. And that is the topic that we are simplifying today. And my special guest, her name is Sarah Reitsma. And I'm told that if you have met her, she'll probably ask you what you want to accomplish and how you want to feel when you accomplish it. Then she's going to roll up her sleeves and curate an experience that leaves you nothing shy of awestruck. She is known for her pioneering work in speech science and B2C design, and her career has spanned over 2 decades. She's most currently at Waterfield Tech, establishing her as a trailblazer at the crossroads of CX, that's customer experience, CS, customer service, and AI. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Sarah Reitsma. Hey, Sarah.
Hey.
I am so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Let's talk AI because, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been drinking from a fire hose at least for the last year or so, and it's not getting any better. There's so many updates. There's so many amazing things happening out in the world of artificial intelligence, right?
Absolutely. It is impossible to keep up with every day. In fact, in the last 18 to 24 months, it's been said that technology has actually moved faster than ever before in history. So just to give everyone an idea of what we're looking at, it is impossible to keep up every day. The landscape is changing. And at the same time, it's really incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and it is because there's a difference between what's happening now than, say, when the scientific calculator came out, when Microsoft Excel was invented. Those are all great tools, but, you and I spoke offline and you said that, and it's really stuck with me, AI is not just a tool we use, but one we collaborate with. So tell me more what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with software, especially in the past, or even like you said, a calculator, a typewriter from quite a while ago, we're using it, right? So it only gives us sort of a one-way use of it. It doesn't ask us what we want or how we want to do something. We have to really fit into the mold that it's given us. But with AI technology, and when we talk about AI, the most well-known one is ChatGPT. So I think that's the one that people can really relate to. So I will sometimes use the terminology interchangeably, AI, or more specifically ChatGPT, although there are certainly other offerings out there. But just to keep it simple, you can talk to it like you would talk to another human being. So think of being able to bounce ideas off of someone. For instance, for you with a podcast, what if you wanted a little bit of help with content creation, right? Or who's out there doing these things in certain industries within certain topics? What are the important things to remember? And I think that you can actually then talk to AI about those things and have a pretty intelligent and nuanced conversation, just like you would with a human.
It's crazy because in mid-May, OpenAI and Google both had massive announcements of advancements to their tools. OpenAI in particular has new voice and audio and video functionalities, which all of a sudden, this technology that was very linear, like I text something in with a chat prompt and you text back to me, and then it's sort of, a chat bot, if you will. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden becomes a real life version of that movie, Her, by Scarlett Johansson and Joaquin Phoenix. You guys remember 2013? If you have not watched it, that's homework for you. You have to go watch this movie now. All of a sudden, you have this two-way conversation with this AI that is intelligent. And that is petrifying for some people and totally exciting for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of us feel a bit of excitement and all of us feel just a little bit of fear, right? So I think people hear about AI in the media and they're thinking, how does this affect me? And one of the things I've learned is people at its worst think it's the Terminator, right? Mm-hmm. And people at its best, which isn't saying much, are like, it's here to take my job, right? Yeah. And so I think that the world around us is going to continue to change because of this technology, but I think it only is going to, as long as the right things are done with it, as long as we follow good ethical principles, it can
Yes.
really raise us all up to maybe do the things that actually we really love to do versus doing the paperwork, doing the administrative stuff, putting together, expense reports and budgets and those sorts of things. So I really like to look at it as augmenting my role at work,
Hmm.
versus it's going to, for instance, take my role at work. And I think those are the things that people are really fearful about when it comes down to it.
Yeah, put simply, I don't think that AI is going to take your job. I think people who know how to use AI are going to take your job. And that sounds really harsh, but the reality is, I am going to bet a nickel. You can quote my words now. I think a year from now, maybe even 6 months from now, mainstream white collar job descriptions and postings out there are going to have needs, qualifications, skills in AI chat prompting, engineering, and be able to use these AI tools fluently. Because I think that what you're doing right now, listener, by listening to both of us and getting it simplified and getting it a base understanding is the exact right thing to do. This is not the time to stick your head in the sand like an ostrich or pretend like it's just going to fly by like a new bright, shiny thing. This is here to stay.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. We've seen job postings that mention something about AI since about 2022 just go through the roof. It used to be obviously nothing, probably prior to 2022, but that is going to become a very important part of your work, how to use it, what to do with it, and like you said earlier, what not to do with it.
Yeah, and bigger than a scientific calculator, bigger than Microsoft Excel. Yes, it is going to help assist you to do a better job, but it's almost like a co-pilot. I mean, not to use Microsoft's words, but it truly is a co-pilot that runs alongside you and helps you do some of the tedious or administrative or the busy work that used to bog you down and keep you from doing those higher yielding tasks. So let's start there.
Okay.
Let's say somebody who's listening to us is contemplating using AI at work. Where do they begin?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is it's very important to understand what AI is and
Mhm.
what it is capable of doing and what you should not use it for, right?
Yep.
So here's how I kind of like to break it down if people are at the point where they don't really even know what is this technology. So I like to give some examples. For example, it can translate. So I can simply ask it, how do I say what's today's date in French? Or now one of the other 80 languages that are actually currently supported by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And it will tell me how to say that in French. Now, I know that people will say, like, oh, well, we have Google Translate. Well, Google Translate does an okay job, but if you actually are talking to people that speak that language, they sometimes laugh a little bit at the things it comes up with. I have several people that speak other languages on my team. And so far, what we've tested with ChatGPT, it is actually very accurate in giving how to say something in a different language. So it can translate. With the GPT-4o release from last week, like you mentioned, it can actually now listen to one language and then speak it back in another. So acting as an actual translator. And so just think of the global potential for this and the encouragement that we have to work more globally and have more communication in the language that each party understand best.
Yeah, I can imagine if you had call centers in India or engineers in Singapore, that would make life a lot easier to have those
Absolutely.
cross-functional meetings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Other things it can do, it can code. So I can give it a plain English set of instructions and ask it to actually write it in a coding language. And probably one of the top two most important things that it can do is it can reason. And not only just reason, but reason in the subtle ways that we as humans do, that we don't even think about doing. So I've successfully asked it to tell me if a string of prime numbers that's written out in numeric form And a string of prime numbers that are written out in text form are the same. So same set of numbers, but one is numbers, one is text.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually will come back to me and say, well, while they do represent the same string of prime numbers, they're not exactly the same because one is a numerical representation and the other is written in words. So just an example of the subtle differences that it can catch, and it's catching them and it's explaining that to us. And then
yeah. And I would say that also with ChatGPT, the things that it is outputting for me now versus, say, January of 2024, profoundly different. I mean, so much more accurate, so much more sophisticated. The technology itself, the machine learning, is learning at such a rapid pace that you are going to be surprised and shocked at how innovative it really, truly is.
Absolutely. It is. It's moving so fast. And with, I think, the GPT-4o, with its voice and now its seeing capabilities, it's just going to explode from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, what else can we do with AI or ChatGPT?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing, and the thing that I'm really going to want listeners to take away today, is that it can, as its namesake indicates, chat. So the best thing to do right now is to use it. Have a discussion with it about the latest book you're reading, or really any topic that you sort of want to discuss. It's a great way to explore where its limitations are, what it can and cannot do, how it's responding. It's also a great way for you to explore how to best ask it questions to get what you want out of it. So have a chat with it. It's really just underneath a large language model, or LLM, you might hear some of us techies say. And that is based on the exact same concepts that predictive texting on our phones that we've had for several years is based on, right? So if I'm texting someone, it's predicting the next word. And then when I choose that word or I type a different word, it's predicting the next word, and just repeating over and over again. It's really the same concept with these large language models that are behind AI and products like ChatGPT.
And again, how fast this is innovated. At the beginning of this year, whenever anybody talks about ChatGPT, chat prompt engineering, that's a fancy way of saying the words you put in, the prompts you give ChatGPT for it to spit out the answer back to you, were very formal in the beginning, where you had to really have context and a task and a role and an action. For example, context. Pretend you are a recruiter of 15 years. Take this existing job description and refine it, removing any bias or and integrating in the company's core values, mission, vision, and streamline the job description to match the other descriptions in this department. Boop, boop, boop. It spits it out. Magic is done. Whereas I find, especially now with this voice and 4.0 model, it's a lot more conversational. It may start formal, like pretend you are a recruiter of 15 years, do this task. And then there's a back and forth volley of like, I don't really like this bullet point. Can you refine this part? Or, give me 5 ideas of how we can reword this skill that's needed. And again, it becomes a co-pilot less than a computer that's spitting out an algorithm, right?
Right. Think of it as your personal assistant, I guess, if you will. You're having it do things like proofread something, or giving you ideas on how to say this just slightly better, or comparing things, or pulling in numbers that are in one spreadsheet into another one so you can do a new budget for the month. All sorts of things across all areas of business. It really is your sort of personal assistant. And I think once you start to chat with it, once you start to use it, again, you'll really understand what it is and is not capable of, and you'll think of new ways constantly to use it, both at home. I use it at home. My daughter recently had a math problem, and her math teacher is out on maternity leave. It's 6th grade honors math. And I'm going to tell you, I'm in a technical field, but it has been a hot minute since I did 6th grade math. And so she comes home, she has to find the area of a trapezoid. And so I don't know what the formula is anymore for area of a trapezoid. And while I could have Google searched what's the formula for area of a trapezoid, I thought, you know what, this is a great place for me to teach my child about the capabilities of the technology. So we went to my computer and I said, okay, I'm going to ask it to explain, like I'm a sixth grader, how to find the area of this specific trapezoid. So I don't just want the answer. I want it to explain it like it's my teacher. And it spits out step-by-step instructions. First, add up the parallel sides and then do this and then do this. It even gave some diagrams using the numbers that I put in. I showed it to my daughter. She right away was like, oh, yep, that's how you do it. I got it, calculated it, and, she was on her way. But it was a really powerful thing to show her that you don't just ask for the answer, you can actually ask it to explain to you how to get the answer. And I think that that is huge because that's a massive learning opportunity for all of us. Again, personal life or work life, to really amp up our learning and learn new things much more quickly than we ever have before.
And I'm so glad that you shared that case study, because I feel like that is applicable in so many ways, just as you said. I think there's opportunity to look into ChatGPT as a coach in various areas of your life, both professionally and personally. I've seen people use certain GPT engines for career coaching, mentorship, leadership development, but also in personal life, walk me through a series of 10 questions to help me figure out where I'm at with my nutrition these days and help me to develop a plan to get my nutrition back on track for the next 90 days. It's like, if you don't know what you don't know that this thing can do, your mind's very limited in what it can. But it is mind-blowing when you can see that this LLM, this basically black box of intelligence, is capable of simplifying so many things for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like another way to kind of, somehow figure out where to begin, and this may sound so silly, but like, make a list of all the tedious tasks or things that you wish you could get help with, right? At work. Let's start there. And, start to list them down, like, oh, I just hate this stupid TPS report I have to send off every Tuesday afternoon at 5. It's so dumb. How can I automate this? Or I hate that I have to respond to these emails every single time. That just seems so tedious. Like, you might be quite surprised to see, well, okay, you go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I've got this TPS report. Can you help me with it? Okay, what do you need help with? And then it leads you through that process of either rewriting it or doing the data analysis for it, or automating some element of it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to try to put it onto those tasks you don't want to do. And it also gives you, again, another proving ground to figure out about it. So I can tell you that in my career, I have to create a lot of PowerPoints. And PowerPoint is probably one of my least favorite things in the entire world. So I'm a conversation designer. I'm a usability expert. I'm not good at graphics. I'm just going to put that straight out there. I design voice conversations or chat conversations, but graphics are not my forte. Organizing things on a PowerPoint page, not my forte. Some of my coworkers would agree with that statement. There's now the ability to give content to ChatGPT or other sorts of programs that have been based on ChatGPT and have it generate the PowerPoint slides, or at least that first draft for you that you can at least iterate from. So I like to think, if you are ever starting from a blank page on any thoughts, ideas, presentation, report that you have to put together, it's great to bounce the ideas off of ChatGPT to get something started. I don't think right now that it can do the entire thing for you.
But it can. It can. Let me tell you. Go on.
Okay. No, I think there's still an element of human review that needs to happen, right? So while it can input or it can output a report, it can output the PowerPoint presentation. It's not like I'm going to pass it over blindly. I'm going to review it. I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to make it mine still. But think of the amount of time that I saved not putting together that initial draft.
1,000%. So I like to use ChatGPT when I am getting that first draft of a slide deck, say for a training material, or if I'm conducting a workshop for public speaking. I'll say, okay, here's my workshop title. Here are the 3 learning objectives I really want to get across. Build me an outline of 10 slides for my deck and what would be roughly on each of those slides. ChatGPT does that. Again, dirty first draft. You always have to put your human side to it. But there's an incredible tool out there called beautiful.ai, which I'll put all these links in the show notes. And you take that outline from ChatGPT, you dump it into beautiful.ai, and within a matter of minutes, it creates the full slide deck for you. Graphics, images, words, the whole 9. It's wild.
Amazing. I learned something today. There are so many AI tools out there. Like we talked about earlier, it's hard to keep up. So I learned something from you today in AI is beautiful.ai. I'm going to go out and try it. I love it.
And so here we need to now stop and talk about the underside. What sort of guardrails or precautions do we really need to keep in mind in order to keep our customer data safe and also our company information secure? Because, once it goes into ChatGPT, it's now in the black box. It's now in the master brain, right?
Absolutely. So, some of the biggest limitations and risks that everyone should be aware of out there, and it doesn't mean that we can't get around these, but we should all understand that there is often harmful bias that can be in the model, and it is because it is trained on the data from the internet. So keep in mind the data that it's being trained on could be from Reddit, from a Reddit conversation that someone had, right? So there can be internal bias in its training data set. For the same reason, it can make up facts and it can make up citations and it can repeat false information that's in its data set. So as we have so learned over the years, just because it's on the web does not make it factual, right? I think probably more than any place else that's true. And now in schools, they're actually teaching kids, how do you vet out what really is factual on the web? Because that's what they're using for all of their sources. Yeah. So its training set has all of that information and data in it. So you really have to understand what it's trained on to know that it can make up facts, it can make up citations, it can repeat false information. We often call that hallucinations. That's our techie term. But it's really exactly what it sounds like, is that it somehow took a bunch of stuff, cobbled it together, and sort of made up a fact.
Yes. And one note quickly on for OpenAI users, one thing that I learned recently is if you have, and again, at the time of this recording, this is true, if you have a paid OpenAI account that is either a Teams account or license or an enterprise license, OpenAI openly says that any information you put in or any information that comes out of ChatGPT is fully encrypted, fully safe. It doesn't go into the master brain, the master black box. However, if you are a free user or a plus user, meaning an individual license, any information you put in and any information that comes out is training the black box. It's training the master brain. You can go into system settings and toggle a button off to say, no, please do not send my stuff there. But I think it's really incredibly important because that's not obvious to most people from the jump. So you go in guns a-blazing using ChatGPT, maybe the free version, and you're like, oh, I'm going to put this forecast report of our revenue numbers in as an Excel spreadsheet and see what it does. Yikes. It's a big risk for company trade secrets to now be training the master brain that somebody else potentially could now access. So be very careful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is super important to understand the different tiers, the different levels, and what comes with them. One of the things that ChatGPT, OpenAI is doing right now is when they release the 4.0 product, which everyone is really excited about because, like you said, you can have an actual conversation with it. They are going to give free users some access to 4.0. In fact, I believe I went on there yesterday and I personally now have access to the 4.0 for a little bit an hour, right? So I get a few tokens an hour. A token is essentially kind of think of it as a way to say, I'm going to reason over this amount of data and it's going to cost me 5 tokens to do that, right? So they're giving me some free ones for 4.0, but again, the agreement, the reason that they're rolling that out to people and individuals is they want you to use it so they can collect the data from it. So yes, do
Yes.
not put your personal information in there or your company information. Like you said, if you have a company corporate tier, it is different. And when we work with clients and customers, that's kind of what we're looking at as they're going to be using those corporate tiers. And so there are quite a bit of protection of data within those corporate tiers.
Yeah. So if you've got a ChatGPT account, let's say you've got an individual paid account, but you're wanting to use it for your stuff at work, I would also highly encourage you to talk to your IT and cybersecurity teams to see if there are any boundaries or, an AI governance plan that's already in place at your company. Because, I've heard of very large organizations that completely ban the use of ChatGPT, period, end of,
Yep.
termination is possible. And others that are in an exploration phase, right? Maybe they're doing it in a testing environment, but it's not spread out, just to kind of keep yourself safe as well, right?
Absolutely. I think that you really need to talk to your company, understand what you're allowed to use at work, what sort of data you're allowed to put in, make sure that you're not doing anything to violate that. And note that most companies are just starting to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
This is complicated. This stuff is complex. They understand that it's important, but it's going to take a while for companies to create governance, for the government to create governance, right? There's all sorts of things in front of Congress and different bodies right now when it has to do with things like who owns your voice. These
Yes.
same types of technologies can take 15 seconds of my voice or your voice, which is now, plenty of our voice out there from just this conversation. And they can actually create a voice print of yours that can be used to sound exactly like you with only about 15 seconds of your voice. So I find that it's incredibly important. And one thing I really want listeners to take away today is to understand what the impact of that is. So first of all, one thing that we've done a lot within contact centers and customer experience is we have done voice biometric applications. So where you essentially use your voice as your password by either saying a passphrase, like my voice is my password, or by actually speaking, I want to make a payment today when I call into a place. And it's like, oh, I recognize you by your voice, right? So you usually signed up for that. You gave permission to do that. It makes things much faster. People felt really safe. It was often used in high value transactions with, financial companies primarily. I have gone and in the last month turned every bit of that off right now until there are solutions and there is vetting around what does this mean. I don't want someone to create a voice print of mine and have this technology be so fooled that suddenly you have access to my accounts. And then,
holy smokes, that's homework number 2, everybody. Maybe turn the voice.
So if you have that, get it turned off. I think the second part that goes along with this, and this is something my family recently did. So I have a husband and 2 kids, a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old. And we came up with a family password. And so if I get a call from my son that says, Mom, I don't have any money right now. I feel like we don't get these calls as often because, right, he's got like a phone with my credit card and all sorts of stuff on it. But if I were to get a call or I need help or something, and it sounded exactly like my son, I can't rely on the sound of his voice that is really him anymore. And so I would then ask him, okay, what's our password? And then he would tell me it if he knows it, or otherwise the scammer would realize that I'm on top of it and it's not worth trying to scam me. And then we would be good to go. So create a password with those people in your life that you believe that could happen with, and do it today. Do it tonight. Don't think that you can't be a victim of scams. Those scams are going to get more and more. Are going to grow more and more as this technology grows. And also think of the emails that we've gotten that are spam, that are phishing attacks, cyber attacks, those sorts of things. Typically, it has been pretty easy to vet those out. Lots of spelling mistakes. I'm a Nigerian prince somewhere and I need $1 million, but it sounds like a 5-year-old wrote it. Well, now they're going to have ChatGPT writing their emails for them. So it's going to sound incredibly professional. It's going to not have grammar mistakes, not have spelling mistakes. And so you are going to have to be more vigilant than ever on understanding that this is a phishing attack. It's a cyber attack. It's somebody trying to steal money, identity, etc. So things to keep yourself safe. Turn off your voice biometrics for now. I think we will probably come to a point where we can turn it back on, but we got to see. And then the other thing is going to be create that password with the people in your lives that you can use to validate that it's really them if they ask for something important.
It's incredibly, incredibly insightful. So you've got your homework and marching rights for next. But, we touched a little bit on it. Is there ways that we should not use AI right now in your mind? Besides putting company trade secrets and customer data, submitting it into it?
Definitely stay away from private data. Right. Be mindful of phishing emails, cyber attacks. Be mindful that it can be biased. And then I would say the biggest thing for you personally is keep in mind that it can make stuff up, right? Yeah. So what does that mean to you when you use it, right? How do you mitigate that? So if you're a corporation and you're working for corporation, one of the ways that we mitigate the making up of facts, the hallucinations, is instead of using all of that internet data that the LLMs are developed on, for instance, Reddit and other things we might not want to be in there, we actually have techniques where we can add guardrails, where we can limit the exposure by training the AI to only look at the data sources that we want it to look at. So for example, you're a company and you have people that are going on your website and contacting you and they're looking for information. They have questions. Maybe, you're a university and you have prospective students with questions. Wouldn't it be nice to have a little box pop up? Sometimes this happens on websites to say, hey, what do you have any questions I can help answer today? If that's driven by ChatGPT, we can actually tailor it to only give information about that, for instance, university's website. So we've eliminated all of the training data that's out there in the world, and we say, only concentrate on the data that we have about this particular website. So you can do the same things in your personal life. You can tell it, I don't want you to talk about these topics. So we talked about prompt engineering, and I can definitely give some best practices for that high level here in a minute if you're interested. But I think one of the things that is just paramount in it all is that you really are giving it guardrails when you give it a prompt. You're telling it, like, here are the topics you can talk about. Stay away from these topics. Please use this data as your source. Don't go here. Don't swear at people. Don't let them boss you around. There's all sorts of stories out there in the media about companies that didn't adhere to guardrails. One of them was a Chevrolet dealership that sold a $78,000 Chevy Tahoe for $1 because someone engineered their chatbot to always agree with them and also to say it's a legally binding offer.
I heard about that. Oh my gosh.
Crazy. So that's just one example of many. Another one was a parcel company that's over in Europe. And someone engineered their chatbot to write a poem about the company, disparaging them and basically saying it's the worst company in the world. It's not worth anything. And then posted all of that information right up on social media. So this can be really damaging to brands. And it could be really damaging to you as a person, either in your career or in your personal life, that if you gave out some information that you got from it and it wasn't accurate, that could damage your reputation as well. So I think learning to write a good prompt, learning how to put guardrails around things so that you're feeling more comfortable that it's not using all sorts of rogue data from everywhere is going to be kind of the best way to combat some of those limitations and how we shouldn't use it today.
Thank you so much for that. I think it's so true. Again, you have to remember it's the dirty first draft, right? That's how I call it. And you're working alongside them. So they will give you the rough framework for things, but you have to fact check. You have to put the human element to it. You mentioned earlier, you do your line of work is in the contact center, meaning, areas of business that handle customer interactions like the call centers or chat support or customer service. How else are you guys seeing AI being used in this area of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think anything that helps to simplify and make easier a conversation that a customer wants to have with a business, right? So you said like B2C communication is one of my specialties. So how do businesses communicate with customers and how do customers communicate back to them? And right now, we're just on the brink of seeing AI start to take some of those customer interactions and be able to be much more like a human, maybe a junior agent. So a contact center usually has a bit of a hierarchy. You have people that you've just hired, they've gone through a period of training and they're put on phones or they're put on chat, right? Whatever channels that particular thing has. And they're told, here are the 2 tasks you're trained to do. You can take payments and help people return items, right? Let's say that you work for a retailer. You can't, however, do these. It's more, once you get more training, once you get more senior agents that are in the contact center, they're going to do those harder tasks. So instead of having that pool of junior agents that has very limited ability to do tasks, we are seeing AI being able to be coached to do those same tasks. In fact, Klarna, you may have seen this or heard about this, worked directly with OpenAI on their chatbot. They were able to maintain their customer experience levels. The repeat inquiries actually went down significantly. People are able to get things done about 2 to 3 minutes faster than they were before, and actually interacting with a real person. And they're saving something like, I want to say $40 million just this year because they automated 2/3 of their chat volume. Yes. So some people will hear that, right? So that's the type of space that we're looking at, is how do we help businesses utilize this technology to actually do communication with their customers? Some people hear that and they're like, well, then there go all those jobs. Those are the jobs that these companies can't hire for to save their soul, especially post-COVID. So most of the companies I work with day to day are short-staffed. They're still short-staffed. No one wants this junior agent position. It's quite low pay. It's very transient. It tends to be a transient population. For instance, high schoolers that need a summer job, college students that, need to plug a hole someplace before they move on to their next thing. So you constantly have turnover of about 30% per year within this. Think if you didn't have to retrain 30% of your workforce every year and you used AI to help someone make a return on their order of clothes that they ordered, or help them make a payment on their credit card, or do whatever, right? Fill in the blank of some of these sort of easier, straightforward transactions. What it does is it makes it faster for the consumer. If I can get an automated AI bot to do this for me, I don't have to wait on hold for a company that has a 45-minute hold time, right? Some of this post-COVID has been crazy hold times to get an actual person. The other thing is that it's actually increasing employee satisfaction within the contact centers. So the people that work for these companies, they don't want to do those tasks. They don't want to sit there all day and speak out a tracking number for your order, right? They don't want to do that. Like, that's not a meaningful task. So what it does is it elevates everybody. We now have AI bots that are performing like a junior agent can perform. And we have senior agents that are now uplifted to actually take those more complex things where it really does still need that human touch It needs maybe just a little more empathy, although the bots are pretty good at the empathy part, or just it's a really complex situation. There's multiple parties involved, those sorts of things. And they get more career satisfaction actually from that than doing those tasks. So it's like the rising tide lifts all boats sort of thing, is it taking the things that people don't really want to be doing.
Yeah. And thinking it from a customer experience point of view, if I've been on hold for 45 minutes, guess who I'm not going to buy stuff from in the future? That's the first place, because it's
Absolutely
so annoying and frustrating in this very much instant gratification world that we live in now. But I also was thinking, as you were saying that, like, you're absolutely right. Rising tides serves all, because if you have greater employee satisfaction, you're going to stay in a job that feels like it has more responsibility, and you can do the piece that you love to do the most, which, great customer service reps are human connectors. They're great communicators. They are incredible, emotional, intelligent humans that want to do the connecting, the empathizing, and the solving, and not the administrative kind of tedious, laborious nonsense, right?
Absolutely. So that's how we're seeing it used. Like I said, we're still at the very edge of it. So there's still a lot of mistrust. People want to see it proved out. Nobody wants to be first, right? Nobody wants to be first down that chute. But I think once the concept really takes off mainstream, I think it will be amazing for all of us to see that, hey, contacting company XYZ is now so easy. And I do see a future where we may have our own personal AI assistants. And instead of me actually making that phone call to do whatever task, fill in the blank, make an appointment, do whatever, I tell my AI, here's when I'm available for an appointment. Go look at my calendar and please call my doctor's office and make me an appointment for my physical, right? Yeah. So suddenly I'm not even doing the contact. I'm actually having an AI do the contact. And on the other side is an AI actually servicing that call and making the appointment. And I know that sounds completely crazy, but I do really believe that we are headed there. I think it will. As a mom, one of the things I want to do is spend the most amount of time with my family that I can, but I'm still like really driven by my career. So some of those tasks, man, if I could have it take some of those tasks off my plate, I will have so much more time to spend to do the things that I love to do. And quality of life could drastically increase for all of us. I have seen, there's actually a company out there too called Figure. They are building actual robots. It's pretty amazing. You can go on their X page or Twitter, whatever it's called nowadays, and you can actually see it. It's sorting things. It's doing dishes. It's sorting dishes. It's starting to do household chores, right? So if my robot can listen to me in the morning and go do my laundry and fold it for me and put it away and clean up my kitchen, man, am I going to be a happy camper. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But it's that same technology that we're harnessing within the contact centers right now.
Literally take all of my money. Like, that's it. That's where we're headed. And it's not that far off. The era of the Jetsons really isn't. And now I know that you've got a free resource for our listeners. Again, this is all in the show notes over at thesimplifiers.com, but you're giving them a free resource on how to write a good prompt, and from the OpenAI website. So we'll make sure to link that up for you guys so you can check that out. And, like I said, things change every single day, and staying on top of the latest and greatest. Do you have any tips there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I would say is, like you said, stay up to date daily with what's happening and when new tools become available. And that can be a really hard task. So when I first started trying to do this about 18 months ago, because I really needed to get my hands around this technology because it was changing the company I work for significantly and quickly, I was looking for resources. And I did end up following a number of people on LinkedIn. So there's lots of information out on LinkedIn, but it was hard to find, and it was very hard to find then in my LinkedIn feed. It's like, oh, I have to scroll through and that pops up to the top. So one of the newsletters that I found is called the Neuron Daily. It is probably my favorite. I've subscribed on and off to several other ones. It's theneurondaily.com. And it really does a great job 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, saying, here's what's happening in AI. Here's what's in the news. Here's what you need to know about. Here are new tools that you could possibly use in your life, in your work, and being compact enough for me to probably read in 10 minutes or less. So that's probably the number one thing that I actually use is really that newsletter at this point.
I love that newsletter so much. It's my first read in the morning with my cup of coffee. It's so great and simplifies it down in normal people speak. So if you're not super techie, you'll still get it and have all the links. So we'll link that up in the show notes for you guys. And of course,
Great.
if you want to reach out to Sarah or learn more about her company, Waterfield Tech, and the work that they're doing out in the world, we'll have all those links on the show notes, but you can also visit waterfieldtech.com, and they are on Twitter as well at that same moniker. So, Sarah, as we wrap up, these are questions I like to ask everybody that's on the podcast. So here we go. And I think you might have just answered the first question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So what's one book or blog or newsletter you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or challenging and poking holes in you?
Yeah, so I do love the Neuron Daily, but I also love books by Simon Sinek. And so my favorite book, and has been my favorite book for many, many years, is It Starts With Why. I ask everyone from my team to read it at least once, but essentially it's about leaders who've had the greatest influence in the world all think, act, and communicate the same way. And it's sort of the opposite of what everyone else does. He calls it the golden circle. And it's really about creating a company, a vision, a product, by starting with the why, like the center of the circle, like why am I doing, instead of starting with the how or the what. And it is actually how the iPhone was created, is it started with why. They wanted a fabulous, easy to use interface, and they built the iPhone from the center out. So that is my most favorite book of all time. And then, of course, the Neuron Daily is a great daily read.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that book. And it really is a quick read, but a profound one, because it can shift how you build strategies, how you create roadmaps, and prioritize what you're going to roll out and when. Tell me, who is one person, somebody in your network that you know personally that you just feel is up to brilliant things? If we were to shine a spotlight on them, who knows, we might have them on the podcast. Who would that be?
Yeah, so I think from within my network, I would absolutely say Carrie Robinson. So it's Kerry. Kerry is from the UK, and he is a visionary when it comes to AI, and specifically with AI and how it affects businesses and the contact center. He's also a juggler. So if you watch his YouTube videos and things, has a lot of content out on LinkedIn. You can see him juggle. You can see him do all sorts of things. He has a weekly newsletter as well called How to Talk to Robots. And I like to think that I'm practical when it comes to AI. Kerry is really the rocket scientist, is what I call him. So he knows all the ins and outs, all the bits and bytes, and can talk about it all day long.
I love it. A person who can juggle physically and metaphysically. That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll link Kerry up in the show notes for you guys if you want to check out the work that he's doing. I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Yeah, so I am grateful for the work ethic that my dad left me. My dad owned his own construction company. He started it in 1956 in Montana, and he built it from the ground up throughout all of my brothers and sisters' childhood and my childhood as well. I watched that man work so hard night after night, doing bids on projects. He really navigated business with grit and grace. And I love
Mm.
that combination because he needed that grit, that tenacity to make it through. But he was such a loving, kind, respectful, and filled with integrity sort of person. And so I'm grateful that he left me that legacy. He's long since passed. But
Mm.
every day when I wake up, my dad used to say, you can sleep when you're dead. And sometimes when I'm really, really tired and I want to quit, I hear that in the back of my head. It's like, you can sleep when you're dead. And I'm super grateful for that. It's something that I have really tried to instill in my own children as time has gone on is integrity, grit, and grace. And so thankful for that legacy that he left and that I can now leave my own family.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
So again, you guys can find Sarah online, either on LinkedIn or their Twitter accounts, and all the links are in the show notes at the simplifierspodcast.com. My final question for you today is this, Sarah. Someone somewhere is listening to us right now. They have never played around with AI. They've been hearing about it for a year now, and they are still very petrified it's going to take their job. What's one thing you could whisper into their ear right now just to encourage them in this moment?
I would say, I would whisper, use the technology. So it's really as simple as that. If you don't use something, you won't understand it, and it's going to be fearful for you. So start to use it, start to understand what it is, what it's capable of. Go to chatgpt.com or download the app on your phone and just really give it a try so that you can feel less scared, a little more comfortable, understand what you don't want to use it for in the future.
Sarah, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.